I never thought I'd end up here, spilling my guts on some online forum about something so raw and humiliating. But honestly, I need to get this off my chest, and maybe someone out there will tell me I'm better off without her. It all started a few weeks before the wedding. Everything was supposed to be perfect: the dress, the venue, the honeymoon plans. I'd been with Lisa for 5 years, and I thought I knew her inside out. She's the kind of woman who always seemed honest, ambitious, and loyal. Or so I believed. That illusion shattered when I noticed her acting strange lately: secretive texts, hurried phone calls, late nights working late. Nothing concrete, but enough to make my gut scream that something was off. But what really set me on edge was that night I found her hiding her phone behind her sister's cushion. I'd gone to grab a drink, came back, and saw her hurriedly pocketing her device as I walked into the room. I asked casually, "Who are you texting at this hour?" She froze, then flashed a fake smile. "Just some work stuff," she muttered. "I didn't buy it, but I didn't push." Still, her quick, nervous glance told me something was wrong. A few days later, I noticed her phone sitting on the kitchen counter when I was making coffee. Something caught my eye: an unread message from her best friend, Mark. I recognized his name immediately. But what really made my stomach drop was the message preview. It wasn't just casual chat. It was flirtatious, intimate stuff people don't send unless they're hiding something. I hesitated, my fingers trembling as I read the snippet. "Can't wait for tonight. I've been thinking about you all day." My mind raced. Why would she be texting Mark that way? They've always been friendly, but I'd never suspected anything deeper. I was about to dismiss it as a joke or a slip of the tongue when I looked closer. That's when I saw a picture she had sent him, a selfie, taken in her bedroom in her pajamas. My wife in her own bed, smiling, but with an unmistakable glow in her eyes. That's when the pieces clicked. The late-night calls, the secret messages, the inexplicable nervousness. It all pointed to a betrayal that went beyond anything I'd imagined. And the worst part, I was certain she'd been lying to my face for weeks. My stomach twisted painfully, my palms slick with sweat as I realized she'd been sneaking around behind my back, possibly even hiding this from her best friend all along. I needed proof. I didn't want to confront her blindly, so I decided to do some digging. I kept my phone close, watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up again. Sure enough, a few nights later, I caught her sneaking into her sister's room, clutching her phone tightly. I followed quietly, my heart beating so loud I thought it might burst out of my chest. When I peeked around the door, I saw her whispering, then quickly hiding her phone when she noticed me. That's when I saw her type the last message before she hurriedly locked her screen. "Tonight's the night. We'll finally be free." It was directed to Mark, I was sure of it. I didn't need more evidence. I'd seen enough. The betrayal was real, and it was worse than anything I'd imagined. I stood there, trembling, feeling the weight of all the lies crushing down on me. My head spun, my stomach clenched with rage and heartbreak. At that moment, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. I couldn't trust her again. But what? How could I turn this betrayal into something she'd regret? That's when I started formulating my plan. I realized I wasn't just going to confront her and end it. No. I wanted her to feel the sting of her deception, see what it feels like to be betrayed so completely. I needed a plan, calculated, precise, and effective. But first, I had to wait for the right moment. For the next few days, I kept quiet, watching every move, waiting for her to slip up again. The anticipation was worse than the betrayal itself. It made me sick, but I also knew it gave me power. I was going to use that power. I was ready to strike. And I knew exactly how I'd do it. I just had to wait for the right time to execute my revenge. When the moment comes, she'll regret everything she ever did, and I'll be the one in control. The days that followed felt like walking on a razor's edge. Every time I saw her, I could feel my jaw tighten, my fists clenched without even realizing it. I'd catch myself staring too long, feeling the burning need to confront her right then and there, but I knew patience was key. I was gathering everything I needed: proof, a plan, the mental strength to follow through. One evening, I was sitting on the sofa, pretending to watch TV, but my ears were tuned into every word she said on the phone. I overheard her whispering in the kitchen, her voice hushed but strained. "Yes, tonight's the night. We're finally free." It was her, no doubt, that message she'd sent to Mark. My stomach twisted painfully. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. I thought of all the time we'd spent planning a future together, all the promises she'd made. Lies. All of it was a lie. I clenched my fists so tight that my nails started digging into my palms. I had to act, but I needed to be strategic. I didn't want her to suspect anything until the moment was right. Later that night, I decided to set a trap. I secretly installed a keylogger on her phone, something I knew how to do from my days working in it. It wasn't about spying out of curiosity. It was about making sure I had irrefutable proof of her plans. When I plugged in the device, I could see her messages and calls in real time. The plan was simple: gather enough evidence, then confront her with everything I'd uncovered. For the next 2 days, I kept my cool. I watched her behavior carefully. She was nervous, fidgety, distracted, sneaking around. I noticed her deleting messages, trying to cover her tracks. My heart pounded every time I saw her glance nervously at her phone. She was paranoid. I liked that. It meant my plan was working. Every secret message she sent, every call she made was stored in my device. Finally, I got what I needed. Her plans were clear. She was meeting Mark at his place that very night, after telling her sister she was going to stay home and relax. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I had enough to destroy her, and I knew it. I already pictured her expression when I told her I knew everything. That's when I decided I'd do more than just confront her. I'd make her feel what betrayal truly is. I prepared myself for the showdown. I kept her phone, ready to expose her, but I also drafted a message to her sister, warning her I knew what was going on. I didn't want her to be blindsided. I wanted her to see that I was serious. When she left that evening, I followed her at a distance, my stomach knotted, every sense heightened. She met Mark at his door. I saw her step inside, her face pale but determined. I watched from behind a tree, clutching a small camera I'd discreetly set up. I knew I'd get the proof I needed, but I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to blow everything before I was ready. While she was inside, I slipped back to my car, heart pounding so loudly I could feel it in my ears. I sat there for a moment, trying to calm myself, but all I could think about was how betrayed I felt, how I thought I knew her, and how she'd made a fool of me. That's when I decided I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I sat down and wrote everything out, the proof I had, how I'd confront her, what I wanted her to feel. I wanted her to realize that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't just some doormat she could walk over. I'd catch her, confront her, and then shut everything down. I wasn't interested in a messy breakup. I wanted her to regret ever crossing me. That night I waited until she came home, her face exhausted but with a guilty glint in her eyes. I told her I knew everything. Her eyes widened in shock, then quickly hardened. She tried to deny it, but I cut her off. I played the recordings and showed her the messages I'd saved. Her face drained of color. "You've been spying on me," she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't bother defending myself. I just looked her in the eye and said, "You cheated, Lisa, with your best friend just days before our wedding, and I'm done." She looked at me, tears threatening to fall, but I didn't care. I handed her back her phone, which had all her secrets. "Take your things and leave. I want nothing more to do with you." That was the moment I knew I'd won, the end of her lies, the end of her betrayal. And I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with a deep-seated anger that I'd let her get away with so much. Standing there, watching her pack her bags, I realized something. Revenge isn't about destruction for destruction's sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity, about making someone understand that their actions have consequences. I'd made her see that. And that's what gave me the strength to walk away, free from someone I thought was my future, but who was just a liar all along. After she finally left, I stayed in that empty apartment a while longer, staring at the space she'd occupied for so many years. My hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of everything that had just happened. I felt a strange, hollow emptiness mixed with a gnawing sense of satisfaction. I'd done it. I'd caught her, confronted her, and delivered my own kind of justice. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. The silence around me was deafening, but it was also oddly peaceful. I had been living in a fog of denial, and now that it was lifted, everything looked sharper, more real. I kept replaying that night. The moment I saw her face drop when I exposed her, the way her voice cracked trying to deny everything. That image stayed with me, a reminder that I'd taken control back from someone who tried to manipulate my life. Over the next few days, I started piecing together what was next. The damage was done, and I knew I had to rebuild. First, I contacted my bank and changed all the passwords, pulled my savings, and made sure she couldn't access anything of mine anymore. I also threw out her things, not out of spite, but because I didn't want her holding onto my life, my memories, my space. I wanted her gone, physically and emotionally. People kept asking me if I felt relief. Honestly, I didn't know what I felt. There was a strange calm, but underneath it was a tangle of anger, sadness, and even a little shame for trusting her so blindly. The worst part was the realization that I'd been living a lie, thinking we were building a future when she'd been secretly planning her escape with her best friend. I needed to talk to someone, so I reached out to a few friends. Most told me to forget her, move on, and find someone who deserved me. But I knew better. I needed time to process, to heal, to understand how I'd let myself get so blindsided. I also knew that I'd never look at her the same way again. Trust was broken, and no amount of apologies or explanations could fix that. One thing I couldn't ignore was how it felt to be betrayed by someone I'd loved. It was a hollow, sinking feeling deep in my chest, like I'd lost a part of myself. I realized I'd taken so much for granted: her smile, her words, the future we'd planned. All those moments now felt like a lie, a cruel illusion that had shattered in an instant. And yet, I refused to let her get the last word. I decided I'd be the one to move forward on my own terms. I cut off all contact, blocked her number, and even changed my social media passwords. I didn't want to see her face, hear her voice, or feel that sting of betrayal again. It was the only way I could get some semblance of peace. In the quiet that followed, I started thinking about what I'd do next. I knew I needed closure, but I also knew I wasn't interested in some drawn-out revenge or petty games. That's when I came up with a plan. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but a way to show her she'd lost something, me, by betraying me. She thought she could get away with cheating, with lying, with hiding her true self behind a false mask. But I was done with that. I decided I'd do something symbolic. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, that I was not some fool to be played. I'd find a way to make sure she never forgets how badly she screwed up. It wasn't about hurting her physically. It was about making her see the damage she'd caused. That's when I started planning my next move. I wanted her to realize that betrayal doesn't just end with an apology, it leaves scars. And I was going to leave one that would stay with her forever. The first step was to let her go completely. No contact, no follow-up, no looking back. I handed over the keys to the apartment she'd just vacated, sealed that chapter of my life. I wanted her to understand that I was walking away, not just from her, but from the entire betrayal. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, the emptiness of what she'd lost. That night, I sat alone with a glass of whiskey, feeling the sting of loss but also the strength of having finally taken control. I knew I had to learn to live with my pain, but I also knew I'd come out on the other side stronger. I finally understood that sometimes the only way to heal is to cut out the poison, no matter how much it hurts in the moment. This whole experience has left its mark, but it's also made me realize something crucial. No matter how betrayed you feel, you have the power to rewrite your story. You don't have to stay in the shadow of someone's lies. You can walk away stronger and more aware of your worth. And that's exactly what I plan to do from now on. The first few days after she left, I felt like I was walking through a fog. My apartment was eerily quiet, the silence almost deafening. I kept expecting her to come back, to tell me she was sorry or that it was all a mistake. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't. I'd seen her face that night, the way her eyes darted around, trying to deny everything until she realized her lies had been exposed. That moment was seared into my mind. I took a long shower that morning, trying to wash away the last remnants of her presence. The hot water burned my skin, but it did little to quell the ache inside. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief that I'd finally uncovered the truth, but emptiness because I'd lost someone I genuinely cared for. It was like losing a part of myself I hadn't realized I still clung to. I knew I had to keep moving forward, though. The first order of business was to make sure she couldn't worm her way back into my life. No contact, no excuses. I blocked her on everything, changed my phone number, and even removed her from my social media accounts. I didn't want to see her face or hear her voice. I needed distance to heal, but even with all that, I couldn't ignore the gnawing questions. Could I really move on? Would I ever trust again? The betrayal was so deep, it felt like a scar that wouldn't heal. I kept replaying the moments leading up to her departure, trying to find some way I could have seen it coming. Maybe I'd been blind, or maybe I just refused to see the signs. For days, I stayed mostly isolated, avoiding friends and family, trying to process everything. I was angry at her, disgusted, but also strangely hurt. How had I missed the signs? How could someone I loved so much turn out to be capable of such deception? It was a bitter pill to swallow. One thing that kept me going was planning my next steps. I needed closure, not just for myself, but for my own peace of mind. I decided I'd make her see that her betrayal had consequences. For her, it would be a lesson, one she'd never forget. For me, it was about reclaiming my dignity. She'd taken enough from me. I started researching ways to send her a message without directly contacting her. I wanted her to understand she'd lost something real, something she'd thrown away for her own selfishness. I knew she'd try to reach out, maybe apologize or beg for forgiveness, but I didn't want that. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. That's when I decided I'd leave a small, symbolic gift at her door. Nothing confrontational, just enough to make her realize I wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. On the third day, I went out at dawn before she could get back to her place. I bought a simple but elegant card, something that read, "You lost me because of your lies. I hope it was worth it." I placed it alongside a small but meaningful gift, a vintage watch I knew she liked, something that symbolized time lost and lessons learned. Then I knocked softly and hurried away, watching from a distance as she discovered it. Her face was a mix of shock and guilt, but she didn't try to chase me or call out. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. That moment was a turning point. I felt a strange sense of empowerment knowing she'd see that I was serious about moving forward. I didn't want to dwell on what I'd lost. I wanted to focus on what I still had, my dignity, my future myself. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to close this chapter and start fresh. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work and hobbies I'd neglected. I started working out again, hitting the gym every morning to clear my mind. I reconnected with old friends, sharing parts of my story, and surprisingly, most of them supported me. They told me I deserved better, that this betrayal was her mistake, not mine. That helped more than I expected. Slowly, I felt some of the weight lift from my shoulders, but I wasn't naive. I knew she'd try to reach out again, maybe to apologize or to beg for another chance. I was prepared for that, but I'd made up my mind. Once her message came, I would respond. I'd cut the cord completely. Anything else would just be a trap to pull me back into that toxic web. One afternoon, I received a message from her on an anonymous number. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was confused and I thought I loved him. "Please, can we talk?" My stomach turned. I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of anger and frustration. I wasn't about to fall for her sob story. I typed a quick reply, "It's over. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked that number, sealing the deal. That night I finally sat down to reflect. I knew I'd made the right choices, but it still hurt. I'd trusted her with my life and she'd thrown it away. Still, I was proud that I hadn't let her manipulate me into feeling guilty or ashamed. I'd taken control and I'd survived. And honestly, I felt stronger for it. The lesson I want to share with anyone reading this: when someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. Don't make excuses, don't wait for the right moment. Sometimes you just have to walk away and reclaim your peace. That's what I did, and no matter how tough it gets, I know I'll come out better on the other side. The weeks went by and life gradually started to feel different. Not easier exactly, but clearer. I still had moments where the pain hit hard, those nights when I'd lie awake, replaying her face, her voice, the betrayal. But mostly, I felt like I was reclaiming my strength, piece by piece. I kept busy, throwing myself into work and my hobbies. I hit the gym every morning, pounding out my frustrations on the heavy bag. The sweat and exhaustion helped clear my mind. I reconnected with old friends, people who knew me before all this mess. They kept telling me I was better off without her, that I deserved someone who truly cared. Their words helped, even if they couldn't erase the sting completely. One day, I actually felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I'd start trusting again someday. Maybe I'd find someone who was worth it. But that didn't mean I was rushing into anything. Not yet. I needed time to understand that I was worth more than someone's lies and secrets. Still, I knew I had to keep the final chapter of this behind me. I'd already made sure she understood she'd lost me. Now I needed to make it official. I went to the courthouse, filled out the paperwork to file for official divorce. It was a simple, straightforward process, but it felt like I was finally closing the door on the nightmare. I signed the papers with a sense of relief, concrete, undeniable proof that I was moving on. I handed over the keys to the apartment she'd just vacated. That place was a reminder of everything I'd lost, but it was also a symbol of my new beginning. I left her a handwritten note on the door. "Goodbye, and don't bother trying to reach out. I've moved on." I didn't want to leave anything that could be used to pull me back into the chaos. After that, I started thinking more about myself. I started dating again, nothing serious, just casual meetups. It was strange, feeling vulnerable again, but also good. I realized I'd been so focused on the betrayal that I'd forgotten what it felt like to enjoy someone's company without the weight of suspicion hanging over me. One night, I met someone new. Her name's Sarah. And she's kind, genuine, and attentive. We had a few drinks and I could feel the tension in my shoulders start to ease. She looked at me with real interest, not just idle curiosity. I told her a little about what I'd gone through and she listened patiently. No judgment, just understanding. That's when I realized the biggest lesson of all. I could survive this. I could rebuild my life piece by piece and trust again, slowly, cautiously, but with hope. I'd learned that betrayal doesn't define me. What defines me is how I choose to move forward after it. Looking back, I see how far I've come. I still feel the sting sometimes, but it's not as sharp. It's just a reminder that I've been through hell and I've come out the other side. I've learned to recognize red flags early, to trust my instincts, and to stand up for myself. And here's the thing I want anyone reading this to remember. Betrayal hurts, sure, but it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become stronger than you ever thought possible. Never let someone's lies steal your peace. Walk away, rebuild, and remember, you are worth more than their betrayal. Keep moving forward, your best is still ahead. It's been a few months since I handed over the divorce papers and started piecing my life back together. Honestly, I don't recognize the person I was back then. That guy was blinded by love, naive enough to ignore the warning signs. Now, I see everything more clearly. I'm not perfect, but I'm stronger, and I refuse to let her betrayal define me any longer. I remember the exact moment I decided to walk away for good. It was after I saw her trying to reach out again, a desperate message begging for one more chance. I read it, then deleted it without a second thought. That was the final nail in the coffin. I realized then that I had to fully reclaim my life, no half measures, no second guessing. I wasn't going to let her manipulate my feelings anymore. I packed up the last of my things that day, handed over the keys, and left that apartment forever. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of relief and resolve. I knew I'd made the right choice. I was finally free from the web of lies she spun around me. No more secrets, no more pretending, no more pretending I didn't see her true colors. Today, I live my life on my terms. I focus on myself, my healing, my growth. I'm dating casually now, no rush, no pressure. I've learned to trust my instincts and listen to what my gut tells me. I still get moments of anger or sadness when I think about what I lost, but they're fewer and farther between. Mostly, I feel empowered, like I finally took control of my story. Looking back, I can honestly say that betrayal was the best lesson I never wanted to learn. It taught me to value myself more, to see through the masks people wear, and to never ignore my instincts. I don't hold any bitterness anymore. Instead, I hold gratitude, gratitude that I saw the truth before it was too late, that I was brave enough to walk away and rebuild. If there's one thing I want others to take from my story, it's this. Don't let someone else's betrayal destroy your sense of worth. You are more than the lies they tell you. You are stronger than the pain they cause. And most importantly, you have the power to choose how your story ends. So to anyone out there who's hurting or feels lost, know this. There is life after betrayal. It's not easy and it hurts more than you think. But with time, patience, and a firm resolve, you'll find your way back. And when you do, you'll look back at those dark days and realize they were just the beginning of your strength. Your new chapter starts now.